Welcome to Moments in Revelation, number 9. I hope you've been enjoying these moments as we've been going through the book of Revelation together. We've gone through the first 6 verses, and today we're going to do something a little bit different before we go on to verse 7. We're going to look at when was the book of Revelation written. Now, why is that important? Take the book of Matthew, for example. Does it really affect our understanding of Matthew as knowing when it was written? Not really. We can read that and understand it without knowing the date. But that's because Matthew is an historical book. We know it's describing things that have already happened. Now let's pretend for a minute that you got a letter in your hands, a sealed letter from somebody that you knew and trusted, and you opened up this letter and it said, I predict that there will be a terrorist attack in New York. Now you look at the date on the letter and you see it was written in 1999. Well, you assume, or you think, maybe he was talking about the terrorist attack that occurred on 9/11. It doesn't mean that that's exactly what it is, but it becomes a possibility. Now, if on the other hand you opened up that letter and then saw the date and it was 2011, you would automatically not even think about the terrorist attack on 9/11 because that's in the past. You would be looking for something that was going to happen still in the future. And the same kind of thing is true in the book of Revelation. I'm going to be saying that some parts of Revelation refer to the Jewish war in 66 to 70 AD and to Nero's persecution of the Christians. Now, in order for that to be true, the book of Revelation had to be written before those events happened. Otherwise, it would not be prophecy. So, it's very important, from my point of view, to see when the book of Revelation was written. Now, if it had the early date that I believe it does, that doesn't prove that it's talking about those things, but it becomes at least a possibility. So, biblical scholars, conservative scholars, are divided on this question. Many go for a late date, and anything after AD 70 is considered a late date. But there are also biblical scholars that go for an early date, which would be any date before 70 AD. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a look at a few of the examples in Scripture, or in the book of Revelation, that I believe indicate an early writing date. Now you'll hear some people that say there are no indications in the book of Revelation as to when it was written. Well, you look at this and you judge for yourself. If you want an excellent book that looks at all the evidence for an early date of writing of Revelation, both in the Scripture itself and outside the Scripture, then you want to read David Chilton's Before Jerusalem Fell, dating the book of Revelation. And that's available free as a digital copy from GaryNorth.com. Just go there, download the book, and you can have a very detailed look at this issue if it's something that is of a concern to you. As we've already stated, the book of Revelation had to have meaning for the first century Christians. It had to be something that applied to them. In the verses that we've already looked at, Revelation is addressed to the 7 churches, and it had to have meaning for them. The entire book had to have meaning for them. And so, if it was written after AD 70, we have to look for events in the near future, within, say, within 100 years of when it was written, that the book of Revelation points to. And I don't think you'll find that there. But put that on the back burner. The other thing we have to look, as we read through the book of Revelation, we see that John often uses the temple and its services as illustrations. Now this is an indication that the temple was still standing when he was writing, and we know that the temple was destroyed in AD 70. Jewish scholar Alfred Edersheim has written, quote, "The book of Revelation and the 4th gospel must have been written before the temple services actually ceased," end quote. So the fact that John uses these illustrations is a good point that the temple and the services were still going on when he wrote. And of course, like I said, they were destroyed in 70 AD. Again, as we noted in the verses we've already looked at, John's told his readers that these things were going to happen quickly, soon. In fact, if you go over to the end of the book of Revelation, look at Revelation 22:20, he says, "He who testifies to these things says, 'Yes, I am coming soon.'" And even if you back up a few verses into verse 10 of chapter 22, it says, "The time is near." So the entire book of Revelation is crouched in that sense of urgency. And I know I already said that previously. And it's very important that it had to have happened within the lifetime of those who read it. And again, if we don't find those events in the Jewish war and the persecution of Nero and the Christians, we have to find them at least within 100 years afterwards. And there's no events in that period of time which meet all the requirements of the book of Revelation, as we'll show as we go through the book of Revelation one step at a time. Now, another very important point, I think this is very powerful, is Revelation 17, verse 10 says, there are also 7 kings. Now, kings was the way they refer to emperors in old writings. There are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, in other words, 5 have died. 1 is, the other has yet to come, and when he does come, he must remain for a short time. So it says 5 have fallen, 1 is. So that means that the 6th king was reigning, or the 6th emperor was ruling when John wrote the book of Revelation. So who were the first 5 emperors? You had Julius Caesar, you had Augustus, you had Tiberius, you had Caligula, and then you had Claudius. And who was number 6? That's right, number 6 was our infamous Nero, who reigned from 54 to 68 AD. So that means that if he's the 6th one, and Revelation was written during his reign, it had to be written sometime between 54 and 68 AD. And again, to see the urgency of the book, in Daniel 12:4, we read these words, "But you, Daniel, close up and seal the words of the scroll until the time of the end." So Daniel was told in his prophecies to seal up the words of the scroll. Now, Daniel's prophecies in many areas, as we look at in our 70 Weeks of Daniel course, were prophesying to the 400 silent years before Christ's coming and the coming of Christ, his birth. So Daniel was prophesying for events 500 to 600 years in advance of where he was living, and he was told to seal up the scrolls because it wasn't going to happen in his lifetime. Now in Revelation 22 verse 10, John is told, "Then he told me, do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book because the time is near." So to say that the prophecies of Revelation are happening 2,000 years after they were written does not match with what John was told, because John was told, don't seal the book because the time is near. The majority of the book of Revelation had to have happened within the lifetime of John or just immediately after. So we have to be looking within that time frame. And again, we don't find anything after 70 AD within the next 100 years that would meet all the qualifications or all the descriptions that we're going to find in the book of Revelation. So those are just some reasons that I believe that the book of Revelation itself gives an early date. The other thing to consider is that when you read through chapters 2 and chapters 3, as we're going to be looking at in the next little while, you will see that one of the major persecutions of the church were the Jews. And if you read through the book of Acts, you'll see that quite often it was the Jews that were stirring up persecution, stirring up trouble for Paul and for the apostles. And yet after 70 AD, that was no longer the case. The Jewish nation was destroyed. The Jews that remained had bigger problems to worry about than the church. So after 70 AD, they were no longer the major persecuting force. Rome became the major persecuting force. And so, but in the book of Revelation, reading in the first 3 chapters, we see that the Jews were still a major persecuting force. And that, again, indicates that the book of Revelation was written while the Jews were still a powerful force in that part of the world. If you disagree with me, that's fine. Just put it on the back burner, understand a little bit of where I'm coming from, and take a look at it as we go through the book of Revelation with just this kind of little background. So next time, we're going to start on verse 7, which is the key verse of the book of Revelation, and we'll see you then. God bless.